Igbo landing. Remembering enslaved Africans who chose death over slavery by walking into the ocean. The Igbo people walked into the ocean together, and died by suicide as they refused to be slaves for the rest of their lives. Faced with the reality of being slaves in a foreign land, Igbo people chose death as they walked into the ocean and drowned while still chained to each other. It was one of the first documented acts of rebellion from the people of Africa against white slave traders. It was the year 1803 and 75 West Africans, with a majority of them being Igbo, were sold for $100 each to John Couer and Thomas Spalding. Igbo tribe, hailing from Nigeria, were believed to be industrious, independent and proud of their work. John Couer and Thomas Spalding bought the Igbo people with the intention of taking them to work on plantations in St. Simon's Island, Georgia, in the U.S. They were packed onto a slave ship, but as the ship neared Georgia, Igbo people rebelled and took over the ship, killing the captain and some of the crew. The ship ran aground in Dunbar Creek, off St. Simon's Island, according to Mother Jones. According to most oral retellings of the legend, Igbo people walked into the ocean while chained, choosing dignity in death as opposed to living a life of slavery. "By the water spirits we came and by the water spirits we will be taken home," they reportedly sang as they walked into the creek. You cannot be an enemy of the land you are a part of. There is no information on how many people drowned and how many were recaptured, but as per documents in the possession of the Coastal Georgia Historical Society, the bodies of 10 to 12 Igbos along with 3 white captors were reportedly recovered from Dunbar Creek. The Igbo landing marks an important chapter in African American folklore, and the act of courage has since inspired many forms of art including films and books. The Igbo landing also gave birth to the legend of the Flying African. The legend goes that some of them returned to Africa by flying back home. Some watching said that they flew home, said Marquetta Goodwine, known as Queen Quet, chiefess of the Gullah Geechee. A common version is that once ashore, walked into the creek in unison, singing and chanting in Igbo under the direction of someone who seemed to be like a high priest among them. This mutiny has been referred to in some quarters as the first major freedom march in African and Black history. In If You Surrender to the Air, Folk Legends of Flight and Resistance in African American Literature, Gay Willents writes that some Igbo people were guided back to Africa by a shaman, while another legend goes that the people arriving at the shore take one look at their future, turn around, and fly back over the ocean. Willents says that the people who have the power to fly are most often identified in this version of the tale as Igbos from eastern Nigeria. The Igbo landing continues to inspire resistance among the African American community to this day. Toni Morrison's 1977 masterpiece, Song of Solomon, was inspired by the Flying African, and the ending is left ambiguous. The novel's main character Milkman Dead is said to leap from a Virginia cliff and fly away. It's open to interpretation if he had died by suicide or if he flew away.
According to Smithsonian Libraries, legend has it that in 1803 at St. Simon's Island, Georgia, a group of 75 Igbo warriors from what is now Nigeria committed mass suicide by drowning rather than begin life in America as slaves. They survived the Middle Passage only to walk willingly into the sea wearing chains. According to Minority Rights Group, Igbo are believed to have originated as a people several thousand years ago in the area where the Benue flows into the Niger River. According to Wikipedia, there are primarily 2 classes of people with Igbo ancestry in the United States: those whose ancestors were taken from Igboland as a result of the transatlantic slave trade before the 20th century, and those who immigrated from the 20th century onwards partly as a result of the Nigerian Civil War in the 1960s. According to CIPDH UNESCO, the Nigerian Civil War, also known as the Biafra War, was a political ethnic armed conflict caused by the attempted secession of the provinces of the southeast of Nigeria, mostly populated by Igbo people, under the name of Biafra Republic. Nigerian Civil War, war between Nigeria's federal government and the secessionist state Biafra that lasted from 1967 to 1970. Biafra represented the nationalist aspirations of the Igbo ethnic group, whose leadership felt they could no longer coexist with the federal government dominated by the interests of the Muslim Hausa Fulanis of northern Nigeria. There were many reasons why Biafra failed in its war of independence from Nigeria. Most important factor was that they did not have the international backing of the countries that matter. The secessionist state only released the hostages due to a campaign of international pressure, including a letter from the Pope. In January 1970, Nigeria finally made a breakthrough, taking key cities and forcing Ojukwu to flee Biafra. By the end of January, Biafra surrendered to Nigeria, ending the Civil War. Biafra ceased to exist as an independent state in January 1970. In the mid-1960s, economic and political instability and ethnic friction characterized Nigerian public life. The Igbo people are an ethnic group in Nigeria, They are primarily found in Abia, Anambra, Ebonyi, Enugu, and Imo states. According to Black Past, the mutiny and subsequent suicide by the Igbo people was called by many locals the first freedom march in the history of the United States. Local people claimed that the landing and surrounding marshes in Dunbar Creek where the Igbo people committed suicide in 1803 were haunted by the souls of the dead Igbo slaves. According to Wikipedia, the result of such slaving patterns made Jamaica, after Virginia, the second most common destination for enslaved people trafficked from the Bight of Biafra. As you leave the page, don't forget to hit the like bell and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so as yet. Thank you.